Tonight, we pull back the curtain on a story that has captured global attention and refuses to fade from public memory. In this special report, we examine the documented network surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and the powerful circles in which he moved. For years, headlines focus on allegations and criminal proceedings, but beyond the courtroom drama lies a broader question about influence, access, and accountability. Our mission tonight is not speculation or rumor, but clarity built on verified records, credible investigations, and publicly available evidence. Understanding how a financier with a relatively opaque background developed relationships across politics, academia, and high finance requires patience and critical thought. The name Jeffrey Epstein became synonymous with scandal, yet before the criminal charges had defined his final years, he was known in elite gatherings as a connector, a donor, and a man who appeared to open doors. Photographs placed him beside former presidents, prominent business leaders, renowned academics, and cultural figures. Flight logs, event guest lists, and foundation records confirm that he attended conferences, private dinners, and high-profile gatherings where decisions and ideas often shaped industries. Yet documentation of association does not automatically imply wrongdoing, and responsible journalism demands that we separate confirmed contact from unproven accusation. As we move through this analysis, we rely on court filings, investigative reporting from established outlets, and statements released by institutions themselves. The purpose is to understand structure, not to inflame emotion. Influence networks often operate quietly, build on introductions, philanthropic contributions, shared investments, and mutual benefit. In elite environments, reputation can function as currency, and proximity to power can amplify perceived legitimacy. Epstein cultivated an image of intellectual curiosity and financial expertise, presenting himself as a supporter of scientific research and educational advancement. Records show donations to universities and meetings with scholars who later stated that their interactions were professional or philanthropic in nature. In political circles, he was documented at events and photographed with officials from multiple administrations, reflecting access that many financiers seek but few attain. Financial sector ties included relationships with wealthy clients and associations with investment figures whose names appear in business records and legal documents. These connections illustrate how social capital can intersect with financial opportunity, creating circles that reinforce themselves through exclusivity and shared status. But as investigators later uncovered criminal conduct, the existence of this network raised urgent questions. How did so many prominent individuals come into contact with a man who would ultimately face federal charges? And what did those contacts truly represent? In the middle of this inquiry lies a tension between perception and proof. Some associations were casual, limited to a single event or brief professional exchange. Others were more sustained, involving repeated meetings, travel records, or financial transactions documented in official filings. The challenge for public is to interpret these records responsibly, recognizing that proximity does not equal participation, yet also acknowledging that access to power carries responsibility. As this report unfolds, we will trace verified timelines, examine institutional responses, and explore how elite networks can shield reputation until scrutiny becomes unavoidable. What emerges is not a theory, but a documented map of connections that demands careful thought and steady judgment. Because when influence flows quietly through boardrooms, campuses, and private estates, it can shape opportunity in ways the public rarely sees. And it is within that quiet flow of access and prestige that the story of Jeffrey Epstein's circle of influence truly begins to unfold. Behind every photograph and every log meeting stands a broader system that rewards connectivity. Elite conferences are designed to gather thinkers, donors, and decision makers in the same room, often without public visibility. Within these spaces, introductions can lead to partnerships, investments, or advisory roles that expand influence far beyond a single handshake. Epstein positioned himself at the crossroads of these interactions, presenting credentials that suggested both financial acumen and philanthropic intent. Public records indicate that some institutions later reviewed or severed ties after his criminal history became widely known, illustrating how reputation can shift when information surfaces. That shift did not happen overnight. For years, questions linger at the edges of public awareness, reported by journalists and referenced in court documents, yet not fully penetrating the protective layers of status and association. When scrutiny intensified, many individuals publicly clarified the limited scope of their contact emphasizing that professional interaction does not imply endorsement. This distinction is essential in any fair assessment, because democratic societies depend on evidence rather than assumption. Still, the broader pattern reveals how access to exclusive environments can blur the boundaries between social familiarity and institutional legitimacy. As we begin this detailed examination, we invite you to consider not only the names involved, but the mechanisms that allow influence to concentrate and circulate with minimal transparency. We will move carefully, step by step, through verified facts and documented timelines. Our goal is understanding, not sensationalism, and insight, not outrage. In doing so, we begin to see how complex networks form, how they endure, and how they can unravel under the weight of investigation and public accountability. The story ahead is layered and intricate, demanding attention to detail and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths grounded in evidence. Stay with us as we trace the documented pathways of connection that define one of the most scrutinized networks in recent history, and consider what those pathways reveal about power in our time, across the world. As investigators and journalists began to examine the full extent of documented relationships, a more intricate picture of influence emerged, revealing how networks often thrive in environments where prestige and discretion coexist. Court documents, deposition transcripts, and financial records provided a framework for understanding not just who appeared in photographs, but how access was facilitated through private meetings, foundation events, and advisory roles. In political circles, visitor logs and archived images confirm that Epstein attended gatherings where lawmakers, policy advisors, and donors intersected, illustrating how fundraising culture can place financiers in proximity to public officials. It is important to emphasize that attendance at such events is not evidence of misconduct, yet the pattern of repeated access demonstrates how elite environments function as gateways to influence. In academia, donation records and institutional statements confirm that Epstein contributed funds to research initiatives and met with scholars at prestigious universities. Some academics later expressed regret, stating they were unaware of the full scope of allegations surrounding him at the time of their interactions. Universities conducted internal reviews, clarifying the nature of contributions and, in certain cases, returning funds or strengthening ethical oversight policies. Within the financial sector, documented associations included meetings with high net worth individuals and business leaders whose names surfaced in investigative reports. These interactions, recorded in flight logs, scheduling books, and correspondence, formed part of a larger web that extended across continents. Suspense deepens when examining how long certain connections persisted after earlier legal issues became public knowledge. Public records indicate that Epstein had faced criminal charges prior to the most widely reported federal case, yet social and professional ties in some quarters continued for a period of time. This raises difficult questions about reputation management and due diligence within elite circles. Did individuals fully understand the scope of prior allegations, or did the culture of exclusivity and personal introduction overshadow caution? The answer varies depending on the documented record. Some associations were brief and occurred before legal controversies were widely reported. Others extended into later years, prompting public scrutiny once the full timeline became clear. Responsible reporting requires careful differentiation between verified facts and inference. When reviewing official travel logs, for example, the presence of a name indicates documented travel, but does not by itself define the purpose or knowledge of other individuals on board. Similarly, meeting entries and scheduling books confirm appointments without necessarily detailing the substance of discussion. This complexity is where public perception often diverges from documented evidence. In high-profile cases, the emotional weight of criminal allegations can lead audiences to conflate association with complicity. Our role as a fact-based news channel is to avoid that leap while still acknowledging that repeated proximity to power can create protective environments. Influence networks operate through trust, reputation, and mutual benefit. A well-connected financier can provide introductions, philanthropic funding, and investment opportunities that appeal to ambitious institutions and individuals. In return, association with respected leaders and scholars enhances credibility. It is a reciprocal system that can persist until transparency disrupts its equilibrium. As federal investigations intensified, media coverage expanded, and civil lawsuits progressed through the courts, Institutions and individuals face mounting pressure to clarify the nature of their relationships. Public statements range from firm denials of wrongdoing to acknowledgments of limited contact. Some emphasize that meetings were professional and brief, while others admitted to underestimating reputational risk. The suspense during this period was palpable, as each newly released document prompted renewed examination of past connections. Every unsealed filing, every investigative report, and every archive photograph added another layer to a narrative that was no longer confined to isolated allegations. Instead, it became a case study in how elite ecosystems can insulate individuals through layers of prestige and social reinforcement. The name Jeffrey Epstein now symbolized not only criminal proceedings, but also a broader examination of systemic access. How do gatekeepers evaluate character when introductions come from trusted intermediaries? How do organizations balance fundraising needs with ethical responsibility? These questions do not have simple answers, yet they are essential for understanding the mechanics of influence. Verified timelines reveal that once scrutiny reached a critical mass, the network began to fragment. Invitations ceased, advisory roles dissolved, and public distance replaced private familiarity. The transformation underscores how swiftly perception can shift when documentation becomes impossible to ignore. Still, even as connections unraveled, debate persisted about the meaning of those associations. Some observers argued that the very existence of high-level access indicated systemic failure, while others cautioned against guilt by proximity. The truth lies in careful evaluation of evidence. What can be confirmed is that elite circles often function through overlapping spheres of finance, politics, and academia, creating environments where relationships multiply rapidly. When one node in that network becomes a subject of criminal investigation, the ripple effect extends far beyond a single individual. That ripple effect is central to this story. It challenges institutions to reassess vetting procedures and transparency standards. It reminds the public that influence is rarely linear and often concealed within private spaces. And it invites each of us to practice critical thinking when confronted with complex and emotionally charged narratives. As we move forward in this report, we carry with us the understanding that documented association must be interpreted with nuance, discipline, and respect for verified fact. The deeper lesson emerging from this web of connections is not merely about one man, but about how systems of access can amplify both opportunity and risk when oversight falters and accountability arrives slowly. In the final stage of this examination, the focus turns from the documented connections themselves to the broader implications they reveal about power, perception, and responsibility in modern society. When the full scope of investigations became public and court proceedings advanced, the network that once appeared seamless began to show visible fractures. Institutions issued statements, boards commissioned reviews, and prominent figures clarified the limited or professional nature of their past interactions. The unraveling was not sudden but gradual, unfolding as journalists analyzed records, as legal filings were unsealed, and as public scrutiny intensified. The name Jeffrey Epstein, once spoken in elite circles as that of a well-connected financier and donor, became inseparable from criminal allegations and a profound breach of trust. This transformation illustrates how reputation can function as both shield and vulnerability. For years, association with respected institutions and high-level individuals reinforced credibility. Yet when verified evidence emerged detailing criminal conduct, those same associations became sources of reputational risk for anyone linked, however briefly. The tension between documented fact and public reception reached its peak during this period. Some observers interpreted every photograph and flight log entry as evidence of systemic corruption, while others urged caution, emphasizing that proof of contact does not equal proof of participation in wrongdoing. Responsible analysis demands that we hold both realities in view. It is possible to acknowledge that elite networks can create an environment of insulation, while also recognizing that accountability depends on evidence, not assumption. Suspense lingered as each new disclosure prompted renewed questions. What did individuals know, and when did they know it? How thoroughly were backgrounds examined before invitations were extended or donations accepted? Why did certain relationships continue after earlier legal controversies were reported in the press? These questions echo beyond a single case because they speak to structural dynamics that exist wherever influence concentrates. Financial capital opens doors to political gatherings. Political visibility attracts philanthropic partnerships. Academic prestige lends intellectual legitimacy. Within this cycle, access can become normalized and the boundaries between social courtesy and endorsement can blur. When scrutiny eventually penetrates that cycle, the consequences are far-reaching. Policies are revised. Compliance departments expand. Transparency measures are strengthened. Yet reform often follows exposure rather than anticipation. The story we have traced is therefore both specific and universal. It is specific in its reliance on verified records related to one individual and his documented associations. It is universal in its demonstration of how influence operates within interconnected spheres of wealth, governance, and knowledge. In reflecting on this network, we are reminded that critical thinking is essential in a media environment saturated with commentary. Verified timelines, court documents, and institutional statements provide a foundation for understanding. Speculation, however compelling, does not. The responsibility of journalism is to illuminate confirmed facts while resisting the temptation to draw conclusions unsupported by evidence. As citizens and viewers, the responsibility extends further. We must evaluate sources, distinguish between allegation and proof, and resist narratives that simplify complex realities into convenient assumptions. The rise and collapse of this circle of influence reveal how fragile reputational capital can be once transparency intervenes. They also reveal how slowly systems sometimes respond to warning signs when those signs are overshadowed by wealth and status. In the end, the documented connections surrounding Jeffrey Epstein serve as a case study in mechanics of elite association. They show how introductions multiply through shared events, how philanthropy can grant entry to academic institutions, and how financial relationships can bridge continents. They also demonstrate that when accountability arrives, it reverberates outward, compelling institutions and individuals alike to reassess their standards and safeguards. This reassessment is not merely about distancing from a controversial figure. It is about strengthening processes that prevent undue influence from eclipsing ethical judgment. As we conclude this in-depth report, the central lesson becomes clear. Transparency is not optional in environments where power concentrates. Due diligence is not a formality, but a safeguard. And critical thinking is not a luxury, but a necessity in democratic societies. The story has been widely discussed, debated, and analyzed, yet beneath the headlines lies a structured network whose contours can be traced through documented evidence. By examining that structure carefully, without exaggeration, and without denial, we gain insight into how influence functions and how it can be disrupted when facts emerge. The ultimate measure of progress will be whether institutions apply these lessons proactively rather than reactively. That decision rests not only with leaders, but with informed publics who demand accountability grounded in proof. Thank you for staying with us through this comprehensive breakdown. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.